So, Jason, why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Jason Clark. As you mentioned, PCC competitor. I like to dabble in all things USPSA, but PCC is kind of my first love, and that's what I always default back to. So that's pretty much it. I'm a 43-year-old father of two kids, got a dog and a wife, live here in the Atlanta, Georgia metro area, and have been shooting competitively now for, let's see, I started in 2016, 2017. So whatever that math works out to be, six years, something like that, 6, 7 years. Yeah, that's
Did
the basis of me.
Did I hear you right? Did you say a 443-year-old
No,
married?
I am 43 years old and have two kids.
Okay. I was like, man, you look great for 443.
Yeah, you know, thanks, but as the years roll through, your body knows when you hit those milestone ages, man. So like when you get to 30, stuff starts breaking. You get to 40, more stuff starts falling apart. So I feel every minute of the 43 for sure.
Yeah, I'm a decade ahead of you,
Yeah.
so I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
That's the fun part about shooting sports is when you're out there on the range and I start complaining about being in my 40s. There's always a guy there to shame me and say you ain't seen nothing yet.
Right. Just wait, it gets better. And wait, there's more.
Yep, for sure.
Well, John, I like to start with icebreaker questions.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
sorry, Jason. I like to
Jason.
start
Yeah.
with icebreaker questions. I don't know where John came from, but so with that, we're going to start with number one, which is what's your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? I would probably have to say The Big Lebowski.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm a Lebowski fan, and I forget which major. Some major, I think maybe Delmarva or somebody just named all their stages after Lebowski. So I was kind of disappointed I missed out on that one. But
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Interesting. I
but
didn't even
yeah,
know that.
I love the Walter Sobchak character that John Goodman plays. It's got some '90s nostalgia in there. Well, I mean, it was made in the late '90s, but like early '90s nostalgia, and it's just a fun movie. So like, yeah, if I got time and it's on a streaming service, that's always a go-to for me for sure. Big Lebowski.
Nice. I like it. All right. So what I've learned is doing this podcast is not a lot of people read. If you
Okay,
do read, what's your favorite
yeah.
book?
Yeah, I don't read a lot of books. I actually do have a couple books here on my desk. Let's see what I got here. Uh, that's a good one. So I got a couple. I actually just brought these from my office. This was actually a pretty good one. Top Gun's Top 10 by Guy Snodgrass, one of the originators of the Top Gun program. He's like a F-14 aficionado, but just a lot of it's not just about fighter pilots and stuff like that, but just like a lot of life lessons and structure of life and how to improve, constant improvement and stuff like that. Just a lot of cool skills. But yeah, unfortunately, don't read a lot and certainly don't have a lot of time for reading. If there's quiet time around here, the kids usually interrupt that. So yeah, not a lot of reading. And I imagine I don't know. Do you get a lot of shooters that are big readers, or that's a pretty uncommon one?
No, they're the only thing that most of them read would be like what you just showed, like a self improvement or a mental management thing. But
Yeah.
that's about it. The only ones that I've seen who have, well, that's not true. There are some exceptions, but what I have found is the ones who have read a lot are typically the former military guys who deploy,
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
like myself, like I haven't read a whole lot of books since I got out. I still have read some,
Yep.
but they tend to be the ones who've read the most because there's not a whole lot else to do when you're out on deployment. So
Sure. I used to spend a lot of time in airplanes and stuff like that before the kids traveling for work. So yeah, I definitely read a lot more back then, but
yeah, there you
not so
go.
much anymore. Not so much anymore at all.
Okay, and that makes perfect sense. And I don't know about you, but if I'm looking at like a training book, like let's say I have a Ben Steger training book
Yeah.
in my hand, I prefer to have the physical copy.
Yeah.
But if I'm just going to read a book for pleasure or whatever, I actually prefer an electronic version.
Okay.
So I don't have, I don't need the actual book where I have to pull it out. I'm okay with just
Okay.
pulling it up on a tablet or a phone. Makes it
Interesting.
quick
Yeah.
and easy. Like,
And I'm kind of think I would say I'm kind of the opposite. Like for me, having the paper copy as a chance to disconnect from all of the e-devices and just fall into the book a little bit. So yeah, I
Okay.
actually don't think I have any books that are digital at all hard copies.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's very interesting. All right, number 3. If you're into superheroes, who's your favorite superhero? If not, favorite historical figure.
Okay. I do the superhero thing. I follow a lot of the Marvel stuff and things like that.
Okay.
I would probably, gosh, let's see. I've never like sat down to think of a favorite. Just enjoyed them for what they are. Um, I don't know. Maybe Thor. I think
Ooh,
Thor.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah.
haven't had Thor a whole lot, but that's a good one.
No, no. I'm just trying to. I'm thinking of like the character arc of like, you have a lot of like cocky arrogance on the front end and like a humbling experience, and then he kind of goes full circle. And I'm also thinking of like the beer drinking Thor in the later Marvel movies when he puts on a little weight. So yeah, that totally fits me.
When the home brewing thing started hitting, then you
Yeah,
got Thor drinking at home.
yeah. So Thor. Yeah, I like Thor.
Okay. Favorite gun and caliber.
Favorite gun and caliber. So I definitely gonna say, well, I was going to default to 9 millimeter because that's what I shoot the most of. But honestly, I think the favorite gun caliber, I'm going to say suppressed 22. Definitely the fun, the funnest. And I know John Royer actually just said something along those lines when you spoke with him. But like in terms of
Yeah.
which one is the most favorite? Probably. I've got my wife for my birthday a couple years ago got me a Tippmann Arms M422. It's like an AR clone in 22, basically like a Smith and Wesson, M&P 1522.
Right.
But yeah, it's like super reliable. It's nice and like it's got some heft to it, unlike a lot of the plastic like Smith and Wesson Type 22 AR style guns. So it kind of feels like a real AR when you're out there shooting it. So probably that one. Yeah, that's probably my favorite gun.
That's interesting. So it has the same weight, but you're shooting
Yeah.
a
So
much lighter
yeah.
caliber.
Yeah, the upper and lower are forged aluminum, just like you'd have on a normal AR style gun. So there's no plastic upper, plastic lower, anything like that. It's got a pretty heavy profile barrel for considering what it is. So like I mean, it's not like 7 or 8 pounds, but it's in the realm of 5 pounds, 6 pounds, something like that. So it's got some weight to it. So
Okay.
obviously, it makes it a pussycat to shoot. No recoil at all. Wife loves it. The little bit that I shoot Steel Challenge, I'll shoot that gun in Steel Challenge when I'm going to shoot some rimfire, which it's not fantastic for that because it is heavy, and the rimfire guns for
Oh.
Steel Challenge generally need to be super light so you can swing them real fast. But it's just a fun gun to shoot. I like it a lot.
I actually have a 22 insert for my AR. So I pull the
Okay.
bolt out, put that in, comes with its
Yep.
own little magazine. It's a fun way to shoot the AR without spending
Yeah.
a whole lot of
Yeah, I mean,
money on it.
yeah. If you're using it as like a trainer tool, having your same grip and stock and furniture on there makes it that way the manual of arms is all exactly the same except for the bolt insert. So yeah, I can see that. Sure.
Yeah, and I had my kids shoot it, and the 5.56 kind of worried them when they were younger. So it's nice to be able to just put that insert in. And 22, they'd been shooting that, so now they were like, "Yeah, let's do this," and then made it more joyful for them.
Yeah, but like I'm not super caliber diverse in the household. Like I don't like to have a bunch of crazy stuff in the house. Like I got 22, obviously. Most of my handguns are 9 millimeter. I've got 140 cal gun. I've got a Glock. Was it 2024? The like super long slide model that I'll dabble in limited occasionally. Trying to think that's it for handguns. Yeah, so it's just 22, 9, and 40 for handguns, and then for long guns, it's just 5.56 and 308. So I'm a practical guy when it comes to that type of stuff. Just so I don't have boxes of random ammo laying around. Like, keep it simple.
I'm very similar. The only additional caliber I have is 6.5 Creed.
Okay, and I've looked at that numerous times. Like I've wanted a gun in that, but honestly, it's probably been 2 years since I've shot any of my long range stuff, so it seemed like a frivolous investment. And most of those guns I shoot pretty regularly. The 40 cal, I'm not a big 40 cal guy, and honestly, the only reason I got it is I had a Glock certificate from a match and have like stacks of every other 9mm Glock there is, and I was like, man, what else could I get that I might actually get some enjoyment out of? And got lucky and was able to pick up a limited production Glock 24. So that's been pretty fun to shoot limited iron sights occasionally.
Okay. I don't, Glock has like 18 different numbers, so I don't even know what is the Glock 24.
The 24 so they have like the Glock 22 is their standard full size 40 cal gun. They have the 35, which is their competition version. That's like the Glock 34 equivalent. So like it's a pretty prevalent gun. And then the 24, I guess they still just call it a long slide, but it's even longer than the Glock 35. So it's like 3/4 of an inch longer. So it's like right at, I think, a 6-inch barrel or something like that.
Wow.
Just absolutely a massive gun. But it's got the slide cutout is like even bigger than the Glock 35. So like the reciprocating mass is similar. So just a fun gun to shoot.
Okay.
For 40.
I've had a lot of guests lately say 40 should go away.
It should. I think major power factor doesn't really make a whole lot of sense in the shooting sports. Back in the days when everybody was shooting 45, and then 9 came into play, and you got higher capacity. Yeah, they needed a way to try to like balance that out, I guess. So like giving them a better scoring advantage made a lot of sense. But now, gosh, I don't know. I haven't looked at how the divisions split, but I gotta say more than 80% of the sport is all 9mm shooting minor.
Yeah,
just from carry optics alone, you look at any major match, and like 70% of the shooters are all shooting carry optics. So it's definitely going to skew those numbers.
Absolutely, completely agree. Now, the fifth question I typically tailor to the guest,
okay,
and in your case, the fifth question is really a prologue, because you had sent me a video a while back, and you told me that you actually competed in paintball.
Yeah.
Before you got into the practical shooting sports. So let's talk about that. How did you get into paintball, and at what age did you get into paintball?
Yeah, so this all happened in high school, and I had a buddy that just like came to school one day, and he had a paintball magazine back in the days when print magazines were very prominent. Brought it in there, and like I played for the first time. I think I was 15 years old, maybe, and just had an absolute blast running around in the woods, shooting up my buddies. And then didn't play again for about a year because the like rental equipment is meant to be robust and not necessarily high performance. So like, being a 50-year-old kid I had a job, but like obviously didn't make a bunch of money. So I didn't play again for almost a year so that I could save up and buy my own gear, and came back and did that. And this was back when I was born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee. So I played there for the very first time, and then moved to the Atlanta, Georgia area in the late 90s. And then got into the competition scene. Started playing at a local site down here. Got picked up with a team when I was, I guess, maybe 17 or 18 years old at that time, and started playing regionally to start, just like in the Southeast, Georgia, Alabama, Carolinas, and then later as it progressed into I guess around 99 to 2000, actually started traveling the country doing it. So kind of very similar to USPSA. They have a circuit where they travel around to different venues, kind of like area matches. They'll have 4 to 5 matches in different parts of the country. And then they'll have their Paintball World Cup every year in Orlando, Florida. So I did that for, gosh, I can't even count the number of years, but basically throughout all of my 20s into my mid-late 20s. Quit for a number of years when started dating the wife, moved in, got the house, got dragged back into playing for a little bit. So I've had 2 or 3 stints at it. And of course, during the time of me playing it, went from being a sport that was in the woods, kind of like paramilitary-esque, to being played in open fields with the inflatable barricades and like using sewer pipe and stuff like that, and all kinds of things to bring the sport out into the open. Made it a lot more fast-paced and a more just like hyper-aggressive team sport. And that unfortunately is also the downfall, is like managing a team of guys to go out and do this stuff. While it's super fun to travel the country with 10 or 12 of your closest friends, dealing with people that are in like different stages of life. You got the young kids that are like super eager to play but don't have money. You got the older dudes that have family obligations but money, so their time is hard to come by, and
Limited.
everything in
Yeah.
between. And then like the number of events I played in like torrential monsoon rains, and it's just like you wake up in the morning to go play the event. It's raining. It rains all day. And you can't bail on that, because then you're disappointing a whole team of guys. Whereas competitive shooting sports, it's fun to hang out with your dudes, but like if you wake up and it's raining and you don't want to go shoot, ain't nobody gonna be mad at you. So
Right.
that's that was kind of the segue, is when I got being a hyper aggressive sport that's really geared towards very young men, and I was in my mid 30s at the time. I was kind of on the backside of being competitive in the paintball world, so that was just kind of the segue. And shooting sports was like the next, competitive venture that I jumped into.
Now, how lucrative can paintball? Because the video you sent me was a live streaming video of
Yep.
like the world championship type thing.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
how lucrative is paintball or not?
Not exceptionally, I would say. It's a very niche sport, and its participation and monetary value varies tremendously based on the economy. Like when the economy was bad in 2008, 2009, paintball like flatlined, and like lots of people quit. So it's very much tied to how the general economy is doing. People, if you don't have disposable income, you're not out playing paintball unless you're a 18-year-old kid, and that's your whole life, right? I'd say it's pretty common to like how the shooting sports are. Honestly, you have people that are, you got your weekend warriors that are out there dumping their wallets out to travel the country and shoot and have fun with their friends. You've got the like semi-competitive folks out there that maybe have some level of sponsorship where they're getting, they're not doing it for free, but they're getting like maybe free gear, discounts on stuff from their particular vendors of choice. You move up to like a semi-professional level, which was like the highest level that I attained, and where basically like most of your gear was free. You had stipends for travel and things like that. And then you have like the top level elite professionals, where a lot of those guys are kind of the same deal, where they're not coming out of pocket very much for anything. And then you have like a few guys that are not only shooting on a sponsored team, but they're also working for a manufacturer in the industry. And I think that's where it ties most closely to the shooting sports. You'll have people like Shane Coley that works for Glock. He works in their marketing department, shoots for Team Glock, and travels around. So he's both. I don't know exactly what Shane is getting, but I presume he's getting paid a
Right.
base salary, and his primary job is to shoot guns. So paintball is kind of very similar in that regard, where the people at the top of the sport, they're not getting rich. You're not making six figures doing that kind of stuff, but you're living your passion, and you're getting a paycheck at the same time for doing it.
Okay, I got you, and that makes sense. Now, do you think airsoft? Because airsoft came in about the same time that the economy went down. Right after that, airsoft took off because that's what my kids got into, and that
Okay.
was about that 2010, 2012, 2013 time frame. It seemed
Yep.
like airsoft exploded, and that was what their world was consumed with.
Yeah, I think the big advantage for airsoft is like where you can do it, right? Paintball generally requires a larger surface. It's noisier. It leaves a mess behind, obviously, because when the balls break, it leaves goop everywhere, and that goop, it's basically like fish oil. So like when it's out there baking in the sun, it gets super super stinky, man. Like you
Does
ain't
it
never
really?
smell it. Oh yeah, you've never smelled stank until you smelled like paintball goop that's mixed with mud and been baking in the sun for a day. It is disgusting. But yeah, I mean, because paintballs at their heart are gel caps. So like all the big companies that are making like Tylenol soft gels and things like that, it's the exact same machinery that makes a paintball that makes those types of medicines. So
Oh, great.
yeah, so like yeah, so I mean it's all the same stuff. So yeah. But like back to your question about the airsoft, like I think airsoft can be played in a smaller venue for the most part. Like here in the Atlanta area, at times there have been places that like had spots in retail shopping malls where they leased out a space and could do it indoors, and the outdoor stuff. It was never really appealing to me because like the big thing in paintball is like cheating. As in any sport, you push the rules and like what's a hit
Right.
versus what's just splatter that came off of something. And with airsoft, when that thing hits you, aside from leaving a small mark that you can't see through your shirt. Seemed like the ability to cheat was exceptionally high, so that wasn't super interesting for me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and you don't get the same distance with airsoft that you do with a paintball gun.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously the mass of the projectiles varies. I think what a airsoft pellet is like 6 millimeters and weighs just a few grams, and then a paintball is
Yeah.
like a 68 caliber projectile, and obviously it's filled with a liquid, so it's got more mass. So yeah, you can shoot that thing a couple 100 feet without issues, whereas airsoft
Yeah.
probably ain't going so far.
No, and I would think, and that's what I've always wondered because I've got some other friends that still do it. They're much younger than me, but every time I saw my kids shoot, it was like after about 20 yards, so maybe after about 60 feet. I mean, or even less, 50 feet. At some point, that BB starts to vary from its trajectory, from its normal path.
Yeah, I mean,
and you
it's
don't
like
know where that
paintballs.
thing is going.
It's going to pick up, even though those are generally, I presume, airsoft or just like paintball guns where they're smooth bore, so there's not like necessarily a spin to it, but they'll pick up a spin because all those balls and paintballs all have a seam on them, so they'll catch some extra friction in one direction or another, and as the velocity decreases and the spin maintains, yeah, it'll zip off one way or the other. That's pretty normal. But yeah, man, tons of people have transitioned from the paintball world into competitive shooting sports. I've shot with several dudes at majors here lately. Tom Castro used to play professional paintball as well. So
Wow.
it is an easy transition for dudes that are used to shooting a paintball gun to PCC, especially because it's not exactly the same, but a long gun is kind of a long gun. The principles are similar, and the best thing for transitioning from paintball to competitive shooting sports is paintball is like basically 100% target focused shooting. You're not staring at there's no sight on the gun generally, and you're just looking to see where things are going, where things are at, and shooting on the move is a pretty common occurrence. So a lot of that skill set transitions and makes it easy to jump into PCC, especially.
Well, and if nobody has ever watched any type of paintball competition, I mean, the trigger action with people and their fingers is just insanely fast. So I'm
Yeah,
sure.
the
even
twitch
that-
trigger movement is helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I would be surprised if Max Leo Grandis hasn't played paintball at some point or another. But so like back when I started playing in the late '90s, everything was mechanical. So I was there for the birth of all these electronic paintball guns, where a typical sear mechanism was replaced by a solenoid valve that was being controlled by a micro switch, and the micro switch is what was actually being pressed by the trigger. So like the ability of having that super fast, twitchy finger movement, or like even the double finger movement, that the electronics are what allowed that to really take hold. And yeah, the sport went from dudes that were only shooting 3, 4, 5, 6 balls a second. When I was playing at the height of it, before they really started to rein it in, like there was equipment out there that could easily shoot 18 to 20 balls per second, just like exceptional rates of fire, comparable to like full auto machine guns. And then the sport's gone through various modes of like controlling that, where they dialed it down to like 10 balls a second, 12 balls a second. There's been a resurgence in the mechanical play. You got a lot of the dudes like me that used to play 15, 20 years ago that are like looking to get back into it, but they're not, they're trying to figure out how they can be competitive and have fun with it again. So there's been a huge resurgence in the mechanical paintball guns of like the late 90s or early 90s.
Interesting.
But, yeah.
And even the video you sent me, which was, I think it's only like 6 months old now.
Something
It was
like
last
that, yeah.
year's World Championship.
Yep.
Holy cow. When I was watching them, I was like, they didn't zoom in on them that much, so I couldn't really
Yeah.
tell. I assumed that it was all manual. Like, I mean, they were,
Yeah, they're-
every round was a trigger press.
It was now through the years, obviously, as the electronics came into play, and you had some deft programmers out there that sort of cheated the system, and they had what was called turbo modes, where it started like throwing in extra shots into the mix that made it hard to catch. But obviously today they've reined that in. They have like handheld chronographs that they're out there checking the speed of the shooters actively during the game sometimes.
Whoa.
And those chronographs can also check for the number of rounds per second, so they can find violators that way through their handheld chronographs. So
Well, I get it, because there were a couple of those dudes that were shooting, and I'm like, I mean, he might as well be holding an MP5.
yeah, but today most all of those shooters are legitimately pulling the trigger for each and every one of those things. And for background on what you're talking about, the video, the premise of our conversation was in regards to trade shows and like how abysmal it is at the top level of USPSA and other shooting sports, where you'll roll up to nationals and you'll have like 4 or 5, maybe 6 vendors that have like a 10 by 10 tent, and that's the extent of what they've got. Whereas with paintball, like all the manufacturers, like all the paint manufacturers roll up with a semi truck full of their product to sell. You've got companies that set up just compounds to showcase their gear. They basically set up on-site retail stores where they're selling the equipment, clothing, you name it, everything is there. And it's something where every manufacturer is participating. That if you're using the gear at the event, chances are your manufacturer is there showcasing their wares, there to offer product support should something go wrong. And it's something that USPSA is tremendously lacking on. And if you've never played any other sports like that, we just take it as, it is what it is. This is what you get. But it's a little shameful for a nationals event to not be supported better by the companies.
Now, how many nationals have you competed in?
I started shooting USPSA in 2017. 2018 was my first major, just local Georgia State match. My very first nationals was the 2020 standalone PCC match that was down at Frostproof, and then the last 2 PCC matches. So I've attended 3 nationals events. Okay,
so the last 3, and I've also been at the last 3 Carry Optics nationals. So we're very similar in that regard. But the reason I'm asking is, do you think? So you've been to Frostproof and Talladega then. Do you think that with the firearms situation politically that it is today, do you think we could draw, we as in the USPSA, enough interest from the manufacturers to do something like that?
Yeah, and that's honestly that's the problem where for let's say a company like Glock or Smith & Wesson or whatever big name manufacturer you want to call out, the competitive scene is such a small niche of their sales that, like, honestly, it probably isn't very attractive to them. So I don't know how you make that leap. Whereas a key difference for paintball is like this. I think there's a higher percentage of buyers that are competing in the paintball world versus the shooting sports, where most of your users are just, they buy a gun and that sits in their safe or wherever for years and years without getting touched. So yeah, I don't know how you bridge that gap, but I mean, honestly, it's at the end of the day, it's no different than a sponsorship, right? You got to look at the dollars, and if there's enough volume there for it to make sense for them, that's how it's going to happen. And hey, we could already be there and we don't know it, but people just aren't asking the right questions or reaching out to the right contacts to try to pull that off. I don't know. I don't do a lot with match administration. I try to work a match or 2 a year, but I don't match direct. I haven't dealt with sponsors in that regard to a match. But I was real pleased to see the effort that I'll go back to Tom Castro. He just did the he worked on a vendor area at the South Carolina Championship here in 2023, and he put together a little vendor area. And he, while it wasn't huge, he had 7 or 8 guys on site, so he had the same number of vendors at a state match that we've had at nationals. And he did a cool little thing where each competitor got a card, so they had a punch card, and they had to go around and talk to the vendors, get their card punched. And when you turned that card in at the end of the match, that puts you you basically got additional drawings for like giveaways, guns, gear, bullets, stuff like that. So that was a way to offer some additional value to those vendors. Was to ensure that, all right, I got 400 competitors on site, but like I talked to 20 people the whole weekend, right? So that's not very valuable to a manufacturer. But when you got 400 competitors on site and you're able to get 250 of them to come by and at least have a conversation and take your elevator pitch, that's something that's probably far more interesting to a manufacturer.
Right. So even if you only convert 5% of that, 5% of 250, you're talking 12 and a half people, whereas in years past it would be 0.
Yep.
So
there's just like anything else, there's pros and cons. But a lot of people are big on like staff reset half-day formats, but the problem with the half-day format is you roll in, you shoot, You pack up your
You're
stuff
gone.
at lunchtime and you're gone. You're not hanging out. It's also the other thing paintball does well is award ceremony. At the conclusion of a major event, there's actually a podium with a microphone and announcers and people talking about the winners and give you opportunity to go up there and give a shout out to your sponsors for the people that are around. And we don't have that because we have half-day formats or we have one-day formats. And the number of times that the winner of the major event isn't present at the conclusion of the match is usually very high. So I'm kind of a proponent of like, even down to state level matches, it's like, all right, you make it a 2-day match. All right, 10 stages, 12 stages, shoot 5 on Saturday, 5 on Sunday. That way, at least everybody is present on the day the match is going to end, and they can make a decision whether or not they should be around. Obviously, that adds cost for the competitor because now you got an extra hotel night and stuff like that. So it's not a perfect solution, but it just depends what the typical competitor wants to get out of it. Are they just out there to pull triggers and have fun, or if you're competitive and you're, no matter what your class is, if you win B class, in your division, how cool would it be to go up there and get your award in front of the group of people that are there? If you have sponsors, be able to have the opportunity to voice that, have the opportunity for photography to go in the USPSA magazine or website or whatever it may be. If you up there and you're wearing your Ricky Bobby jersey with all your logos and stuff to show off whoever's supporting it. We're missing tons of that stuff in this sport, and I don't know all the right answers for that, but we can do better for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I knew Tom had done some type of vendor thing. I didn't know to the extent and what he did. That sounds really good. I mean, that sounds like something you could do at nationals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't do. I mean, maybe they do raffles. I don't know. I haven't seen anything like that at nationals. But yeah, man, give every competitor a punch card. You got every vendor name on there. They have a little, different shape of hole puncher, and you walk around and talk to the people, and it's a win-win for everybody. It costs USPSA the printing of the cards and buying the punchers. The whatever giveaways you're going to do were donated prizes most likely, so like very little effort required on the part of the organization to bring some value to the vendors.
I almost feel like if you coordinated in advance enough, like you could reach out to whoever's going to be there and say, look, there's 14 vendors. Each one of you need to have some way to punch this card that's unique to you.
Or that,
and just leave it up to them, because maybe they'll make something with their logo, or you know what I mean?
Sure, yeah. But those people there with tents are people that already donated prizes to the event. So like, why wouldn't they want to try to get a little bit more out of what they're doing?
Yeah,
I think it makes tons of sense, and especially at nationals, man, because for nationals, everybody's there multiple days, so lots of opportunities and downtime to go visit all these people versus just shooting, bailing, going back to your hotel, going to the pool, or whatever you did at your rental house. Drive some value for these vendors to be there.
Yeah, totally agree. The other thing that the other reason that came up was live streaming. Mm-hmm. And that started the conversation.
And I know USPSA's done. Yeah, they've done a little bit of live streaming, but it's like basically a stationary camera that's just sitting there, and like. If you're in the sport, great. Maybe you know what's going on. But like even mid-level or new competitors that maybe are checking it out for the first time, all they see is a guy running around, and they see some targets, and they have no idea what's happening. So having some sort of commentation, having some rhyme or reason to like what you're doing. Like I don't want to say just follow the super squad, because like that's interesting, but like it needs to be something cool for everybody that's there participating. But something that's giving some live insight as to what's actually happening at the match versus just a random, we'll set up on this stage for 10 minutes, this stage for 20 minutes, whatever the case is.
Yeah. Do you think that now, based on what you're used to with almost said airsoft paintball, do you think, and now you've been competing long enough in USPSA, do you think it could be successful? Is the sport set up in such a way that, like, when you watch paintball, you see the entire field, and then they'll have, basically 3 cameras, one from the side where you can see the entire field, and then one on each, we'll call it end zone, where the teams start, so you can see their perspective looking down. Do you think, with the way our sport is, that it could be successfully live streamed.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, you got to pay somebody that knows what they're doing to do it, right? We did it like with the lowest possible effort. We've set up one camera that's connected to the internet, and boom, it live streams. But yeah, you need somebody that can like switch back and forth between the feeds of like, something that's behind the shooter, something from a side profile, like you said, maybe even drone footage where it's showing overhead views. There's all sorts of possibilities there, but like it to be successful, it's going to require some investment, and some company or person like Josh Froelich has been doing a lot of fantastic footage at these matches that can have a AV person on the fly that knows what they're doing and run this thing and like switch it back and forth between shots, have somebody that's knowledgeable talking about what's happening. You're not going to be able to do like live scoring, but like, a brief rundown of the scoring perhaps, because, when the competitor's done within 20 or 30 seconds of the last bullet pulled, generally you've got a score on the tablet. Even today, a lot of that stuff is happening live, with immediate uploads to Practice Score so people can view the results on Practice Score Competitor and things like that. So there's lots of possibilities, I think, of how to pull that off. But it requires investment.
Well, and I do feel like they could do live scoring in that by using the Practice Score Competitor app, something like that. You could still put people, like even if it's just day one. So some people are maybe done shooting, or how everybody starts on a different stage, so it's not equal per se.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you could still say, well, right now, Max Michel is in the lead because he can still gain the most number of points of any competitor. So you could do it that way.
Right. Yeah, you got to use that high available tab in the competitor
exactly.
app. But it there's trickery to that, right? To your point is like you get people that maybe they shot the match they shot a Friday staff day where it was all day, so all their points are in, so they're showing at the top. But yeah, the max potential is important, but it's also hard to understand for the average person of like, that number means that they win every remaining stage and take every remaining point. So they are going to drop, and it's hard for people to visualize and understand how much you are going to drop, as the match progresses. And honestly, there's no way to know for sure. You can look at, let's say a 3-day match and somebody shot 2 days, and you can go, all right, well they've won 85% of the points thus far. So you could apply that across the board of the remaining stages they haven't shot, and that'll give you a nice like baseline. But they're going to have good stages and bad stages, and it's not a perfect system, but it's enough to give you a good baseline. And it is better when you have people where nobody but perhaps staff has completed the match prior to the conclusion. The high available works better in that regard versus when you have somebody that finishes the match before everybody else.
Yeah, and I think someone had made, when I put out the survey, someone had made the suggestion to do like a Sports Center thing at the end of each day. And that's where I think it would be really interesting at the end of day 2. So you're going into the final day, and then you can really talk about the what ifs. Like right now, so-and-so could win the match because they have the most points still to gain, the high available. And I think that would really add a very dramatic impact to that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the social media posts would be tremendous and get a lot of value, a lot of traction of that. Yeah, sort of a daily debrief of nationals or whatever event it happens to be. The stats guys working these matches, they have enough insight to kind of understand what's going to happen. Plus, that's kind of the purpose of the super squad is like chances are your top 10 guys, most of them are going to be on that squad. There will be, potentially a few outliers, people that didn't make the super squad because of whatever reason, because super squad basically is like a favorites race. It's no longer like, all right, you place top 10, you're automatically in. Like chances are you are, but it's not a defined process. So like if the powers that be don't like somebody, they're not on the super squad. And then you have people that just don't want to be on the super squad because they want to go shoot with their friends and have fun. And ultimately that's kind of what the sport's all about. That's a whole other discussion right there of like forcing top level competitors to be on the super squad versus not. I think there's a simple way of solving that is like, all right, well, you're a super squad. Well, you don't pay for your match. Your match is free, and we're going to tell you what to do. You got to be on the super squad. But like, it's hard to tell somebody that paid for their match or had a sponsor cover a slot that you're going to do what we said because, you're no longer a customer. We're telling you what to do. But
Interesting.
yeah,
I like that. And you're right. That might be enough to sway some of those people to be on the Super Squad versus shooting with their friends or whatever.
yeah.
So, shoot, I had a comment, but it's gone.
It
So it
happens to
is
the
what
best
it
of us.
is. Yeah. Oh, okay. I remember now what it was. And the other thing I think too, with by doing some type of live streaming thing, or even if it's something at the end of the day, say an hour long session, a couple of things that I had was you could take the CRO from each stage where the stage is empty. You can record them walking you through the stage and giving the high points of what the challenges are and stuff like that. But it also gives you an opportunity for 15-second ads for all of the vendors at different places throughout
Sure.
the video. So even people who are just going to see this on the internet because they heard about it, now these vendors are still being seen by these folks. The 50,000 people who watch the video, they're all going to
Yeah.
see these 15-second
So
videos.
these CR walkthroughs, these are happening during the match or after the match is over. You're thinking
Well,
like daily type thing.
Well, no. What I'm saying is, I think one of the things I was trying to figure out was, I was like, all right, I would want some. Number one, I in my mind, I'm like, I was trying to get there with a media badge. I applied back in early March. I still haven't heard a thing. So for me, that's over. It's done. I'm not.
Yeah.
It's too late in the game. And that's another conversation because I feel like they're trying to control the streaming ability and the narrative of the match as well, amongst other things that
Sure.
has been going on.
Yep.
But so again, like if you're not in with them, then you're not going to get that access, and that's how I
Sure,
feel
sure.
where I'm at. So, but anyway, drone footage of an empty stage. And then you have the CRO of that stage walking you through it, explaining, the start position, how many rounds, the activators, and showing the activator sequence on an empty
Yeah.
stage.
That's cool.
And you record all of that, and then each day, you can say, okay, everybody's starting today. Here are the stages. This is how they work,
Yeah.
and you can break it up.
It's a cool concept. I think the potential risk is for competitor equity, right? You have somebody that's already shot that stage, and then somebody comes through, they're shooting it the next day, and they get the opportunity to get this video footage. I think that's something that needs some attention, just so other competitors aren't getting some insight that prior shooters maybe didn't get. But I think for like a match wrap up video or like you mentioned like I think the content of like an hour, but like I think like a match conclusion video that shows the highlight reels and maybe has some stuff like you're talking about, and then like a run through of the final scores of like the top competitors and like how they were able to achieve that by winning key stages or whatever the case may be. I think that would be great for an end of match. I think it's a little tricky to manage the competitive equity trying to do it during a multi-day match.
So do you think, like, and I'm only talking nationals, okay? Do you
Yeah,
think
yeah.
still, if it's not until the end of day one, people get there a day earlier and walk all the stages?
Yeah.
And sometimes, like me, I've seen the ROs shooting the match on that
Yep.
day, so I've been able to see this. And then they have, if they shoot in the afternoon, they have all morning to come and watch the stages and
Yep.
people's Instagram posts. And then, for the people shooting in the morning, they have all afternoon to still go and watch people shoot other
Yeah.
stages. So do you think at that point, at the end of day one, that it even matters?
I think it. I honestly, I think it does, because if you're following the super squad, like watching an RO shoot on staff day, or watching Joe competitor shoot it on the first day, I think that's a different level of information than you get by having a video of a super squad shooter running through it, and an RO that's watched hundreds of competitors go through and talk about the individual challenges of the stage. I think there's a different level of information there, personally. And me as a competitor, I would certainly watch something like that at the end of day one on stages I haven't shot and try to find a new nugget of information, perhaps of something that I missed. Your point is valid. Everyone gets different levels of information at the match, but depending upon how early they got to the match, how much stage walking time they got. But that, that's something that could be controlled by doing it more along the lines of how IPSC does stuff, where you don't get a chance to be on the bays before. That doesn't limit watching people, but I don't know. I'm a big fan of competitive equity and what however that looks, whether that is just doing the best to make sure everybody gets the you can't control the weather, but like that's the reason why. One of the reasons why something like a super squad exists, because when you have 10 guys that are all gunning for the top spot and all have a valid chance at it, it's important that they're all exposed to the same type of stuff, whether that's weather, whether that's sun angle, whether that's how, whatever variable you want to look at. Anybody that has a chance to win, I think it's important that they get as close to the same match as their fellow competitor. It's not to say that everybody else
valid point.
Shouldn't get that, but even if you want to break it up by classes, because ultimately that's what we're shooting. We're shooting to win a division, and then we're shooting to win our class if you're not going to win the match, right? So, like, if every master class shooter has the same presentation, every A class shooter has the same presentation, to me, that is competitive equity. Now, that's troublesome when you have self-squatting and people can jump on with whoever they want. It's hard to manage, but where we can control it is all the way at the top with super squads and things of that nature.
All right, valid point.
Yeah.
All right. Now, so as a teen, you got into paintball. You kept going. You kept doing that up into your mid-30s. At what point did you shoot a gun?
It's a great question. So actually back to paintball, I played from like 15 to 16, and I quit for the first time around 26 or something like that. Was out for a couple years and came back in my early 30s. I did not fire a handgun for the first time until 2010. So what was that, 12, 13 years ago? So that's a relatively new thing for me. I had a buddy at work who was kind of into the self-defense thing, and he just like, hey man, you want to go to the range on Saturday and shoot some guns? And I was like, yeah. Like, I obviously I'd been exposed to guns. I was born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee, but I did live in the city, right? So like I couldn't just like walk out in the backyard and shoot guns. I'm certain I fired a hunting rifle or something like that from an uncle or my dad or whoever, like when I was a kid, but didn't really do guns at all until 2010. Not that I was averse to guns, I just wasn't exposed to them, especially handguns, and just wasn't something that I did. But like once my buddy took me out, shot a gun for the first time. I went out and bought my first gun a week later. Did the square range thing where I just go to the range 2, 3, 4 times a month, stand on the range, punch out the center of a bullseye target. It's like, all right, cool, gun still works, and I can still hit a target, great. And then the same buddy, this was, I guess 3, 4, 5 years later. So I think 2015 was my very first match ever, and it was a derivative of IDPA. Went out and shot a handgun in that match, had a blast. It kind of sparked that competitiveness that I'd been missing from the paintball thing for a while. The buddies that I started shooting with, they kind of shot a handful, 2, 3, 4 more matches, and they were done. And then it took off for me. I shot probably 3 or 4 matches a month doing that locally. And then, it was all a done deal from there, man. So it's, you talk about guys when they get into their 30s and 40s, their personality focuses around barbecue, their lawn, a car, a boat, something like that. And for me, it's guns now.
Yep. All right. 2 questions. One, you only have one chance to get this right. You're from Knoxville.
Yep.
Best pizza ever is from where?
Best pizza ever. Louis is a spot that I love.
Oh, you didn't go to Big Ed's?
You know what? So, all right. So, yes, Big Ed's is fantastic. Actually, I just went there last year for when I was there for the Atomic Blast. There's one in Oak Ridge. But Louis is like a super old one, and it was, and I say that because it was like by the neighborhood I grew up in Knoxville. So that was the spot I went to with my family. But yes, Big Ed's is fantastic, and like I said, I just went there with wrong side, Jason with Brass Monkey Bullets. We all, everybody that was there shooting with his team, we all went out to dinner at Big Ed's in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, last year, and it was phenomenal. It was really good stuff.
There's a whole lot of shooting sports pictures on those walls.
Are there? I didn't pay that much attention, but because I think I just shot the match. I don't remember if I'd
What?
shot. Yeah, I just finished shooting the match. I mean, we were just sitting there. We were all just like engaged in conversation with each other. So like we were in our own world the whole time we were in there. But
All right. So you got to
that's good to
make a
know.
trip back, and you've got to look around the
Yeah,
walls.
we'll check it out.
Jason, I ate there before you were born.
Okay.
So I have been going, I can't say that. Back in the late 70s, mid to late 70s,
Okay.
my dad was, so I spent some time on there it is, right there behind me, on the Marine Corps rifle team. Well, in
Yep.
the 70s into the early 80s, he was the head coach of that team. And every year, they would go to Oak Ridge to shoot a match because they have a long range there. And the Army marksmanship team would be there. Everybody would show up. Like it was a big match every year. And at the end of the match, everybody went to Big Ed's. The Army
Okay.
team was there. The Marine Corps team was there. Everybody went there.
Yeah.
So a lot of the memorabilia on that wall is starting in the 70s. ESPN even has stuff on the
Yeah.
walls at Big
Okay.
Ed's Pizza.
Very cool. I'll definitely
Yeah,
check that out next
you
time.
got to
I'm there.
go and take it in.
Won't be this year though, because that match is not in East Tennessee anymore. They moved it out like west of Nashville area, so we'll probably be back to that area this year. But we'll definitely check it out next time I'm in the area.
Okay. All right. So I know that paintball can get expensive because there's a lot of different stuff. So is practical shooting still more expensive than paintball?
I think it depends on your level of involvement.
Okay.
And when you're doing it in life, right? Because like when I started, when I was in my teens for paintball, it seemed outrageously expensive. A paintball gun could easily be over $1,000 for like a top level model. Paintballs themselves, like when I first started playing, it was like probably $120 for 1,000 paintballs. That's come down. You know, paintballs have gotten way less expensive because the margin of those things are just outrageous. But like maybe it's 50, 60, $70 these days for that type of stuff. I don't think you practice to the same extent with paintball that you maybe can do with handguns, because like
Probably
handguns you
not.
can go out and work, you can go out and work individually on stuff, whereas with paintball you can do some individual stuff, but it's mostly a team focused sport, right? It's all like communication and I hate to say tactics, but tactics, coordinated
Yeah.
movements and things
Yeah,
like that.
absolutely.
But yeah, at this point, man, I would, in terms of like how much paintball gear I've ever owned versus how many firearms I've owned, there's no comparison. Firearms are way more expensive.
Okay.
Yeah, basically just because I got in even deeper, right? Like being like for PCCs, like I've got 3 or 4 PCCs right now, right? Obviously, I can only shoot one at a time, but I've got them, got some that are purpose tasked for USPSA versus Steel Challenge, backup gun, backup of a backup gun. Not that I've ever needed them because the Da Vinci's never broken, knock on wood. But yeah, I've got way more guns and bullets in the house right now than I ever had for paintball gear, for sure.
Now, we've talked a little bit about it earlier, but specifically for you, what do you think from paintball helped you the most going into practical shooting?
The big thing is like the movement aspect, because paintball is a sport where you don't spend a lot of time in one spot, and if you do, it's kind of in like an austere position. You're kneeling, squatting, something like that, and you have to be at a moment's notice able to jump and run to the next spot. So it's not marathon running, it's sprint running. So that's obviously exactly how USPSC is. It's spot to spot to spot. And then that target focused shooting is a huge thing. Now, obviously, back when I first started shooting using iron sights, there's a time and a place for target focused shooting with iron sights. But when I got to the dot game of shooting carry optics and PCC, 100% the way to go, where my eyes are always focused on either where I'm going or what I'm shooting, and it's never on the gun or on the reticle of the optics. So I'd say those are definitely the two big things. It's just that the quick spot to spot movement and then target focused shooting.
So you never had to worry about staring at a sight or a dot because you were so accustomed to not.
Exactly the opposite, I would say. I would like shoot a stage back in the early days of my shooting and be like, man, I didn't see my sights one time.
I say that now.
Right. I mean, that's actually a huge problem a lot of people have. But like, you get to a point where that kind of just starts working for you. And it's not that I'm not seeing the sight. It's just that it's happening so subconsciously that it's just, it's just a part of me now. But no, I mean, I would say the biggest hurdle of that transition was like knowing when to throttle that back and like let sights actually settle and get a good second look at a target or something like that.
So while it's the greatest benefit, it's also the greatest harm.
Yeah,
Per
I mean,
se.
it's like the normal progression in this sport. It's like you're never going to get faster just by shooting alphas, but like you can get more accurate while you're out there running around like a wild man, right? Like you can make a breakthrough that way. Not necessarily, you're not going to get ever faster by just standing and shooting alphas. So like it all comes down to just visual acuity. Like you see, you can only shoot what you can see, and you just learn to see stuff faster. Is how that goes.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, what division did you start in?
So my very first USPSA match ever was Carry Optics 10, back when it was a provisional sport. That one of the so I got into electronic dots early, in like mid 2010, like 2014, 15, whatever. Like before the Glock MOS ever existed, I was getting guns cut for optics. And unfortunately, the sport that I started shooting in, GADPA, was, like I said, it was a breakaway sport from IDPA where they actually cleaned up the rule set a lot, made it a faster sport, it made a lot more sense. But they weren't very adaptive to equipment modifications of the day. So like when I wanted to just shoot basically a stock Glock 19 with a dot on it, that put me in their open division, so I could be up against like legitimate open guns with 170 millimeter mags and compensators and stuff like that. So that wasn't very fun, obviously, from a competitive equity, because like I want to measure myself against people that are shooting my division. And if you don't know the person, you don't know what gun they're shooting. It's like when you're just looking at the scorecard after a match, unless you know the person, you don't know if they were shooting a Glock 19 with a dot or if they were shooting a race gun. So that's kind of what drove me over to USPSA, was like their rule set made more sense in terms of equipment divisions. And it was a national thing. So like GADPA had a ranking system, but it was Georgia focused. So it was all people that were local. I mean, there were several hundred competitors that participated, but at the end of the day, it was a much smaller measurement of oneself. So the ability of like a national classification system and then divisions that I thought at the time made more sense were a lot more fitting. Now, with that said, Carry Optics 10 was terrible in my opinion. Like I didn't even have enough mag pouches, like competitive mag pouches, like Blade Tech pouches or whatever I was using at the time. Like I literally had to go to my truck and grab every like Kydex conceal carry mag pouch that I had and slap it on my belt to be able to, because you got to have at least 5 mags for a 10 round type division, right? So all those mag changes weren't super fun. At least it's a new competitor, because I was so trying to like figure out what to do in this new sport that like basically all my focus was on, all right, every time I move, I've got to change a mag. And I think that's why a lot of new shooters, when they come into USPSA, why you like drive them into limited minor, because you just shoot your gun at capacity and your focus is on shooting the stage versus like managing your gun. So Carry Optics 10 was my very first thing. I shot it only one time. I enjoyed the USPSA, but again, kind of didn't shoot it again for like another year or so. I had made the transition into shooting a lot of carbine during that time. I'd always enjoyed shooting rifles, but didn't really have a good competitive outlet for it. The GADPA sport, like if they had a fifth match day of the year, they would do like some special division, whether it was like carry gun only. They would do some with bring your AR in and we'll run it that way as well. And I found that I really enjoyed shooting the AR, but like outside of 3-gun, there was not a lot of places to like running gun with a 5.56 carbine. That's how I kind of found PCC. Originally, my very first PCC was actually a CZ Scorpion when that thing was debuted at SHOT Show, whatever year. I think it was 2015. Like I saw that thing, I was like, oh wow, that's super cool. I got to have that. So bought it, shot it. 20 minutes after I got back from the range, I was on the ATF's website filing a Form 1 to put a stock on that thing, and that was kind of the end of it. So that CZ Scorpion SBR is actually what I shot for the first couple of years in PCC and USPSA. And then had a local guy was like, dude, he's like, you're pretty good at this. You should come out and shoot a major match. And that's exactly what I did. I went out and shot Georgia State in 2018 after about a year of doing this stuff, and that was the end of it, man. I was hooked. Like, so I said I was just going to do this for fun. It was going to be a weekend thing, and it's turned into like now I'm traveling the country, shooting major matches all the time, and it's been loads of fun.
Now, when you picked up PCC, how long did it take you to make GM?
So I think my initial classification obviously happened before my first major, so that happened in 2018. I classed A initially when I first started. I made Master in 2019 and then made GM in 2021. So it was kind of like a 2-year step between the divisions for me.
Okay.
One of those bumps, like the A to M bump, probably had more to do with gear than anything, because during that time I switched from the CZ Scorpion, which, while it's a fun gun to shoot, it doesn't have the splits of an AR type platform because it's meant to be a full auto machine gun. It's got a really heavy bolt, and the bolt speed is kind of coordinated by that. So going from that platform into like a normal AR9 platform helped tremendously with the A to M move, and then the GM move, I never really had obviously everybody has a goal of being a GM, but I wasn't out there like actively doing stuff to try to make GM. I was just, all right, as I learn the sport and I get better at shooting the sport, my classifiers are just going to naturally go up over time. And that's exactly what happened.
Okay. Now let's go back for just a second. GADPA,
Yeah.
Georgia, defensive?
Georgia Defensive Pistol Association, I guess, or whatever. Basically,
Okay.
whatever the IDPA acronym is, but replace international with Georgia.
Okay. I have to check that out.
Well, that league is they are now defunct and they have rolled back into IDPA. So like it basically happened. There was a Georgia State championship before I ever started shooting competitions. They had some kind of falling out with the organization, so they said, "All right, screw you guys. We're going to do our own thing." So they kind of built their own sport. And one of the big things they did, they had a modified target. So like it had like a smaller A zone in the chest, and it had like a spinal column that was also an A. And then they did half-second down penalties versus the full 1 second. So it made it a speedier sport, which is
Right.
why
People weren't
which is why I like that and IDPA less, because ultimately you need speed and accuracy. And IDPA, it feels like obviously at the very top you got speed and accuracy, but like your average weekend competitor in IDPA, the focus is way more on just accuracy, and they're out there moving around at a snail's pace, picking up zeros.
Yeah. I enjoy shooting IDPA, but my biggest issue with them is in real life, people don't stand still. You're going to be moving. So
Right.
why can't I engage moving from one place to another? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's okay.
It's meant to be a It's meant to be a defensive sport, but yeah, they want to control every action that you do, and that's just not how defensive encounters work. Like, I'm going to reload my gun when I want to reload my gun. I'm going to move when I need to move. I'm going to shoot on the move when I need to move. I'm going to shoot targets in the order that makes the most sense to me, not just based on slicing a pie or nearest to furthest. Which I understand they had to create a rule set, and that is a logical way to go about that. But like, if you pick up a PE because you shoot a target that made more visual sense to you, like that's exactly what you would do in a defensive situation anyway. So like, why would that be a penalty?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I get it. You don't want people standing in the middle of an open space and just shooting at targets. Okay, then give them a penalty if they stop and engage.
Well, so that was one. That was one thing GADPA did, is they had like for indoor matches specifically, is they had they would use tape for their fault line. So they would use red tape, and that was a hard stop where you had to shoot from a position of cover. And they would use yellow tape that was like an option. So like you could shoot from the position of cover, or if you crossed the yellow line, you had to shoot every target moving while you were in that open space.
I like it.
So the sport made a lot of sense. It really did.
Okay, yeah, I like that. That does make more sense. They did that, I think it would be I think a lot of USPSA shooters would be more willing to shoot it because then you would cut down the time just by giving that opportunity.
Yep. I really like that sport. Like I said, the only reason I got out is I was looking for a larger measure of myself, and national was a way to do that. And then equipment divisions kind of drove me out. Now today, IDPA's fixed everything for the most part. Their carry optics division makes more sense than USPSA's. They do PCC now, which I never thought I'd see the day that the IDPA was doing that sort of stuff. But at this point, the sports have pros and cons for sure, one way or the other. I've shot one IDPA match this year, and that's when I went and got my classification. I'm planning on shooting the Georgia State Championship this summer, and that'll really be all the IDPA that I plan to shoot. But yeah, I had fun.
Okay. All right. So I have a few more questions talking about PCC stuff.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on PCC length shots in matches? And by that, I mean beyond your standard 25 to 35 yard pistol shooting.
Yeah, I know this mindset exists in the brains of lots of match directors. They're like, all right, you're shooting a carbine, so we should be shooting at 80 yards, 100 yards, and beyond. Personally, I don't feel that is the sport of PCC. For me, it's more like a QCB type shooting, so it's meant to be fast and it's meant to be accurate. And honestly, if we just want to talk about ballistics, I'm shooting it's a 14.5-inch barrel, but I'm shooting the same 130 power factor that a carry optic shooter is shooting. So my bullet drop and velocity loss is going to be comparable to that same handgun, right? An open gun is better equipped to shoot a 100-yard shot than my carbine, simply because of the velocity. If they're shooting open major, the ballistics of their projectile are far better suited for that, even though they don't have a shoulder stock. So like the first PCC Nationals I shot was at Frost Proof. That Shannon Smith was a match director for that, so he had some of that crazy stuff. There was like 65-yard paper targets. There was a 45-yard popper that activated a swinger that was at 50 yards. I just don't feel that like if you're shooting 5.56 guns, I think that makes a lot of sense. But shooting a pistol caliber carbine, it's just not the sport. You look across divisions. The goal is to be fast and accurate, right? PCCs can definitely do that. But what differentiates a top-level PCC competitor from some mid-level guy is not necessarily the shooting. Everybody can punch out alphas, right? That's not a challenge in really any division for the most part. It comes down to the speed and gun handling. Running around a stage with a 45-ounce handgun versus a 7-pound rifle that's 32 inches long, that's the challenge for me. There are some stages that it's not a problem at all. You have big open field courses. Maybe for PCC it presents some opportunity for like some longer distance shots. Maybe a handgun guy, especially an iron sight shooter, wouldn't do a 40-yard cross base shot, but maybe for a PCC it makes sense. But for me, shooting the same stages that pistol shooters are doing, but doing it with a rifle, whether that's a pro or a con, is the challenge for me. Tight quarters, shooting it, hard left leans, port shooting, stuff like that. Those are things that are definitely advantageous to having a handgun, and that's where the PCC challenge comes for me, is shooting from these more difficult positions with the carbine.
Okay. And
so running gun, nothing beyond 30, 35 yards. Do whatever target difficulty you like. Hard cover, no shoots, swingers, movers, drop turners, that stuff's all cool. But the challenge of the sport should be the same no matter what the division is. And you're just going to go at different speeds and different levels of accuracy based on your division, whether it's irons or optics, whether it's open or PCC. That's where you're going to see the differentiation.
Okay. And that's a good answer. I don't shoot PCC, but I have stated publicly that I'd like to see not only the shooter but the platform be challenged. But I mean, maybe I need to rethink my position because I don't shoot it, and that was a very well thought out answer. So
challenge. So like a great example of this is we have Cardi B that just joined the Da Vinci team. He was a carry optics GM, shot with the Marine Corps team, and phenomenal shooter. He's picked up the PCC. He's adapted to it very quickly, but he has some challenges, right? And it all comes down to running the carbine in those specific environments. And this is, again, if we're just standing and shooting at a stationary target, even if we're shooting a 60-yard bill drill, I think most shooters can do that within a relatively small margin of each other. But when you're out there running around with the rifle in those environments, that's where the differentiation occurs. Distant shooting is all tied down to velocity and ballistics, and the PCC just isn't meant for that. nobody's shooting an MP5 competitively at 100 yards, and the sport is, it's not built around SBRs and stuff like that. But you do have people that are shooting SBRs in PCC. So because you have dudes that are maybe shooting only a 4 or 5 inch SBR gun, and you have dudes that are shooting 16-inch guns, the velocity difference may be negligible because they're custom loading for the gun for power factor, but the ballistics, the spin of the bullet, all that stuff comes into play when you get out to those kinds of distances.
Sure.
So,
all right. Well, and that brings up the next question, because you had posted something on your Instagram that I thought was interesting. So this is a two-part question. I'll go ahead and transition the picture on now. But at what distance do you, there you go. At what distance do you zero your PCC? That's first.
So my PCC standard zero is at 25 yards, give or take. It could be 23, 25. There's not a huge difference in the distances that we shoot. But this particular image I posted some time ago, and this was when I started shooting.
1 second, Jason. 1 second. For the people listening, that he posted on Instagram of 3 USPSA targets side by side, and his reticle superimposed on it at 7 yards, 15 yards, and 25 yards. So you see where the reticle sits on the target at different ranges. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. So this is just something I visually realized while out shooting as I moved to a new optic. So I started shooting the holographic sights here, about 2 or 3 years ago, and I noted that with the EOTech, specifically the one that has the circle dot reticle, or donut of death as it's called, that a lot of the common distances that we shoot, call it 7 yards to 25 yards. So at 7 yards, that 65 MOA circle basically mathematically covers the A zone edge to edge. It does the same thing with the C zone at approximately 15 yards, and it covers the width of a USPSA target at approximately 25 yards. Now, how you use this to aim. Now, obviously, I'm still using the center dot most of the time to do that aiming, but what it gives me is as I'm transitioning between targets, I'm going to see that 65 MOA circle come onto the target before the dot, and that gives me an earlier visual cue that it's almost time to shoot versus a dot that's just kind of floating out in space approaching the target. Another interesting thing with these circle dot reticles is for close in shooting. If you have approximately a 20, let's just call it a 25 yard zero. Well, if you're shooting a 5 yard target, you've got to contend with that mechanical height over bore offset between the actual bullet leaving your barrel and where the center line of your optic is. Well, the EOTech and actually the optic I'm using now, the Vortex Razor UH1 Huey, whatever they call it, it's got too many names. The bottom of the circle, or in the case of the Huey, they've actually put like a little triangle at the bottom instead of just the vertical hash mark. They put a triangle, but that's like a CQB hold point for the carbine. So that raises it up. Your typical height over bore offsets like 2.5 inches, 2 3/4, something like that on a normal AR platform. It is point of impact at 5 to 7 yards. So instead of having to hold my dot off the top of the head box to get an A, I put that hash mark on the EOTech or the top of the triangle on the Vortex Razor right where I want to hit, and that is where it hits.
Very interesting.
These types of reticles are helpful both for transitions where you see the big circle coming onto the cardboard before you get there, and then also it's kind of a cheat for close-in targets. So if you want to have that 25, 30-yard, whatever zero distance you have, it negates having to do a mental offset when you're holding on the target. You just put the bottom of the reticle right where you want to hit, and it hits.
So what is your bore and sight height? Do you know? What is that offset?
So the Vortex Razor now is what's called a lower 1/3 height. I don't know the number exactly off the top of my head. I think it's in the ballpark of like 2.75 inches or something like that. I'd have to check it. But carbine shooters know to do this, right? They know how to hold off of a target like that when it's super close, but it's something that you have to think about. And for newer shooters especially, like things that you have to think about equals going slow. Being able to do things subconsciously means you get to go faster. And this type of reticle is just helpful for that. For people that I've let shoot my gun or just look through the reticle, the common complaint is, oh, that's just too busy. It's going to be distracting for me. And my retort to that would be like, yeah, of course, like there's more going on here, but This is basically a visual cue for you that you're looking at the reticle and not looking at the target. Because when you're target focused,
Yes.
you're looking through you're looking through the reticle, and you don't honestly you just don't notice it. It's just there. It's part of the background image. So for people that are maybe trying to transition to a more target focused shooting, like even if it's a handgun, Hollow Sun does a lot of these reticles now where they have the circle dot. It's kind of the same thing. Like if you're actively noticing that there's more than just a dot, that means you're looking at your reticle and you're not looking at the target as you should be.
I couldn't agree with you more in that regard. Now, it's interesting you say this because I like the fact that you have these three up, because this is what I'm finding in the data that I'm running is that the closer your sights are to the bore, so like iron sights, they need to be zeroing about 10 yards to give them the longest sweet spot, meaning no hold over or hold under for the greatest amount of distance. Carry Optics runs right about 15 yards. And PCC, I'm finding, is that 22, 23 to 25 yard zone. So the higher, the farther out you need to zero.
Yeah. Yeah, so my zero distance basically has me, except for the ultra close stuff, but like in your common engagement ranges of 10 yards or more, I'm going to be plus or minus 1 inch throughout the entire range of shooting that I'm going to do. So like unless there's a super tight no shoot array or something like that, I don't have to think so much about that hold. I just know that it's going to hit a little high or a little low based on the distance. But yeah, sweet spot is definitely important, and it's one thing to like put your data in a ballistic chart and see a chart. It's another to actually go out and like trust but verify. Like the numbers are the numbers, but what's actively happening out of your gun is definitely way more important.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
But yeah, for my handguns, I'm kind of in. I think you mentioned 15 yards. I'm kind of more in that wheelhouse. 15 to 17 yards is kind of the ballpark of where most of my handguns with dots are zero.
Yeah, and that's where I'm finding is the sweet spot. Like with my Carry Optics gun, 0 to 50 yards. It's aim normal spot and pull the trigger. So I don't have to, and that's what I was posting on Instagram was I was trying to find that spot exactly because I don't want to have, that's one less thing I have to think about, which you said exactly what the whole reason I did it was so that I don't have to think. That's one less thing it's just normal. Just put the gun where, look at your spot. When the dot gets close, pull the trigger, you're good.
Yeah. You cannot be a top level fast competitor in this sport if you are having to actively think about everything that you're out there doing. The more things, we're meat computers at the end of the day, right? So we have a finite amount of RAM space, and the more of that you can clear up for tasks that are actually really needed for it, the better success you're going to have, the fewer errors that you're going to make. If you're out there worried about where your trigger finger is and like how you're holding the gun while you're running and stuff like that, that's all computing space that you're eating up, and that's just going to eventually turn you into a mistake.
Yeah, and not everybody's built the same. Not everybody has 64 megabytes of RAM. Some of us only have 8.
Yeah, you got RAM and processing speed to contend with, right? So like you got to work within, and that you got to work within the confines of what you got. You got people out there. Yeah, you can drop 10 splits on your gun. Great. How are those hits? And if your hits aren't there at 10 splits, well, 14 splits are going to do you way better to get 2 alphas than an Alpha Charlie or an Alpha Delta with 10s, right? So
exactly.
You got to work within your confines, and that's like anytime I'm helping somebody out with like stage planning or whatever, I'm like, look, this is why I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. Here's the risks as I identify it, and like if one of these risks like sets off your spidey sense of hey, I might mess that up, my plan probably ain't the plan for you.
Yeah. And Nil said it right. He's like, train your weaknesses, shoot your strength. So when you're going into that match, shoot what you're strong at. I always try to, whether it's a local or a level or an area or a sectional or nationals, I always try to plan my stage plan around my strengths so that it 100%. Makes it so much easier. So, and I am not a GM level shooter. So I am not gonna, now what I do like to see is after I shoot, compare what my plan was to other people. But I come up with my plan. It's me. It's mine. It's unique to me.
Yep.
It's not always different because depends on, were we all forced to start the same place and end the same place? So they're all going to look similar, but
There
it's
are
mine.
very few stages out there where the plan makes a huge difference. There are definitely some where if you shoot it the wrong way, you're costing yourself 3-4 seconds of time. But for the typical USPSA type stage, any plan that you can execute to perfection is better than one that's not fluent for you, right? So like people
Yeah.
that, one of the worst things you can do generally is to change your stage plan. There was a reason that was your stage plan to start, because something about the flow or how something visually looked made the most sense to you, and with very few exceptions, that's how you should do it.
And you know what? And here's a stage you and I both shot 2 years ago. So 2021 Nationals at Talladega. That was PCC and Carry Optics.
Okay.
Stage on the section 3. I forget exactly what they called it.
The fun stuff.
Yeah. So I think it was stage 14. That was the one where you had to shoot weekend for the last 3 targets.
Yeah. You ran up
So-
to the front left side there, or you had the option. It was whatever,
Right.
but-
So I shot right, ran all the way up front to the left, shot that, came back to the middle, and engaged the last 3 there because weekend is not my strength. And those were the closest targets. One of them was a popper, so I only needed one shot at a fairly close range, so it was much easier. But there's an example of, some people shot right, shot the middle, and then shot those far targets all weekend. But I was like, if I do that, I'm going to be there for 6 minutes. So I'm gonna cut 5.5 minutes off of that time and do it a different way. So
Yeah, no, 100%. And then just like you got divisional type stuff, right? So like for PCC, it's not so easy to like sling that thing from one shoulder to the other. So by shooting those front
Yeah.
targets for me, it gave, I had some movement space that I could soak up that particular
Transition.
action with. Yeah, so it gave me more
Yeah.
time to like get the gun over on my shoulder, and if I got it there soon enough, I could try to get crazy and like shoot some stuff on the move. At that point, that section of that particular match was like survive. So like try not to make mistakes in all those stages. So I definitely I don't think I opted to do that. I think I just got to my spot and shot. But yeah, no, that's definitely a great example. I think there was another stage. I don't know if it was that match or maybe it was last year's Nationals, but like there was one where you had an opportunity for poppers, and you could either shoot it from the far back right at distance, or you could run up closer and shoot them through a port. And of course, most of the handgun guys opted to go to the port and close that distance, and a lot of the carbine and open shooters opted to shoot it from further back. But yeah, you got to look at your own personal strengths and weaknesses. You got to look at divisional differences. Like hopefully your stage walking buddy is shooting the same division as you, and if they're not, hopefully you guys can have a realistic conversation about what may be different between production and Carry Optics versus open or PCC, because it can make a huge difference. The best plan
Yes,
for
it
PCC
can.
usually ain't the best plan for production.
no, or even Carry Optics. I mean, because typically we're going to have
even-
a mag change or distance on the targets, just like you said. I'm probably
Yes.
not going to take that 35-yard shot.
I shoot with a lot of Carry Optics guys, and like we'll be walking the stage and they'll be like, "What's the round count?" And I'm like, "I don't know, dude. I shoot PCC. I don't have to deal with
Yeah,
this stuff."
it's one
But, like,
magazine. That's what
does
it
bite me
is.
when I do jump back and shoot. 'Cause, like once I get out of, I got the Area 5 Championship coming up here shortly. Like once I'm out of that, I'll spend the summer not traveling to majors, and I'm just going to stay home and shoot more local matches. And I will dabble in Carry Optics and open and limited, or whatever tickles my fancy on a particular week. And I do have to actually get back in the groove of counting rounds and figuring out when to do a mag
Right.
change.
So what does your training look like, Jason?
Not very much. Most of my training is just by shooting matches.
Okay.
With a full work schedule, occasional work travel, two young kids in the house, a boy that's just playing spring little league ball. My time is at a minimum. So most of my training is focused around shooting local matches against known competitors. I was blessed here in the Atlanta market when I came up in USPSA. Had a lot of local GM shooters. lots of local GM PCC shooters specifically. So being able to measure myself locally was something that was very easy to do. So I had a lot of shooters that I could gauge how I was progressing just through that. About the only training that I do is like maybe if I see a match where there's something unique, like last year's PCC, was it last year's? It's 2 years ago. No, it was actually 2 years ago. The one with it was the PCC Carry Optics match where they had that. There was like the standard stage where you had to do a weak hand reload.
Yes.
Yeah, so like who practices for that, right? So like I went out to the range, maybe a week or two before that match and did some reps on that. But unless there's some unique physical challenge, I don't do a lot of training, honestly. It's one of the things I like about the carbine shooting is, having such a busy personal life. I can put down that carbine for 2 or 3 weeks, and those skills don't perish quite as quickly as a handgun does. Any day that you're not dry firing or at least holding your gun to manipulate or whatever, like your body just sort of starts forgetting what it was supposed to do. So big reason of why I shoot a lot of carbine right now. Number one, it's the division I had the most fun in, which is, at the end of the day, this is a recreational sport, so it's important. But being able to be competitive while not being able to shoot the gun as much as I'd like to is also one of the other big factors.
So do you do more dry fire then? I mean, do you even get in some dry? No. Okay.
Like if like when I switched from the EOTech to the Vortex, it was a different. I went from an absolute co-witness to a lower 1/3. All right, I'm gonna do some dry fire reps for that. I do have some like mini IPSC targets and stuff like that I will do the occasional dry fire for. I did spend some dry fire effort on reloading a couple of years ago because that's a huge deficiency for a lot of PCC shooters is the ability to reload the gun on the clock. And while it's not a challenge you're often posed with, it is one that you usually have to do if you do want to rank up through classifiers. You're going to come across quite a few classifiers, especially the older ones that have mandatory reloads. So I use you mentioned this earlier, like you take something you're not good at, a disadvantage, and you turn it into take a weakness and turn it into a strength, and that's exactly what I've done with reloading the carbine. So like reloads are not a problem. I'm probably one of the rare PCC shooters where I'd give up the big stick in a heartbeat if we could shoot major power factor through these guns and actually get a scoring advantage for that. So give me 170 mags and 165 power factor for the PCC, and I'd be all about it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I don't know that there's a lot of guys on that island with me, but
I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. I mean, that would kind of change the entire complexion, but that's pretty cool. I like that.
I mean, you look at it. I mean, I kind of look at PCC as like open, minor, long. The rules basically apply. So like shooting PCC major with 170 mags, it's going to be just like open. The majority of the stages, you're still not going to have to do a reload on, but you'll, at a 10-stage match, you'll have 3 or 4 stages where you gotta work in a reload. So it's not going to change the game dramatically, but it's going to allow me to go even faster, take an occasional Charlie, and it doesn't hurt as bad. So I'm all about that.
And I feel like ballistically, and number wise, I mean, how hard would it be to do a 150 grain bullet in a 9mm and reach 165? I don't feel like that would be that difficult.
It's not hard at all. I haven't tried it in my Da Vinci, but like one of my earliest carbine builds, I used like a ballistic advantage. It was a full 16-inch barrel, and shooting like 124 grain Blazer brass, it was like right at 160 power factor with factory ammunition. So it's unique enough. It's unique enough that you would still have to load for it, but most PCCs, like for people that are just shooting off-the-shelf pistol ammo, like they're flirting with major already.
Well, but what like plus P ammo then would reach?
Oh, plus P would definitely do it for sure. So yeah, I mean, there are some off-the-rack projectile bullet combinations that would get you to major, but
pretty quick.
Yeah, your standard 124 stuff is really, really close in a lot of guns.
Yeah. And I know you're a Brass Monkey guy. Don't they make like a 137 grain?
He does all the way up to 150. So like, man, right. the number of 9mm profiles he has is astounding. How he keeps up with the production is beyond me. But I prefer light bullets in the carbine personally. So I shoot 115s. But yeah, he does all the way up to 150 grain projectile. But
Yeah.
130, he does the 115, he does a 125 round nose, a 127
20,
conical, 135
yep.
round nose, 147 flat point, and then yeah, like a 150 round nose, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it would be very easy. And we're just talking brass monkey here.
Hmm.
But I mean, a lot of bullet manufacturers same way, but it
Yep.
wouldn't be hard to take whatever profile you prefer, whatever grain you prefer, and just
Yep.
change the recipe a little bit, and boom, there you are. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't imagine that they couldn't handle the
Oh
little
no, they can
additional.
like. Oh no, these. I mean, most of these guns. I run a lighter profile barrel in my Da Vinci personally, but like a standard carbine profile for 9 millimeter. There was an image that floated around years ago where people were having problems with reloading for the carbines. They were using like heavy bullets and super fast powders, and they were having lots of like squibs. And JP did like a cutaway barrel of theirs where it had like 16 squibs just pounded one after the other, and like the exterior of the barrel was fine because we're not talking
Wow.
3,000 feet per second projectiles here. We're talking it's all relatively slow stuff, and the barrel
Right.
material is very thick in comparison to a pistol. So no, it could definitely handle major.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, what is your ultimate goal in practical shooting?
So the goal that I've really the only one I've got is like just participation. So like I try to shoot on average of 40 to 50 matches a year, locals and majors. I'm shooting 10 majors this year, which I'm on track to do that. I've got three or four already in the bag this year. Three, yeah. So I shot South Carolina Dragons Cup and just came off Area 6. So 10 majors will be the ultimate goal. Top 10 at nationals is kind of my goal. I
Okay.
flirted with it for my first PCC nationals. I was like 60, 67, 68, something like that. And the last 2 years, I've been in the top 20. So I was 18th in 2021. I was 16th last year, and yeah, just a couple of like small little errors kept me out of the top 10. So it's there. Even with the limited training that I do, it, it, top 10 is definitely a possibility for me, and
Yeah, you're
that's the
knocking at the
ultimate
door there
goal. Yeah.
for sure. Now,
So
what does your make ready look like?
so that's a great question. Wow, that's not what I've been posed with before. So I actually the make ready starts even before the make ready, right? So like when I'm in the on deck shooter or the in the hole shooter, I will kind of separate myself from the group a little bit, work on like breathing just to control heart rate and relax. I will use the being in the hole shooter and the on deck shooter. I will use that buzzer to sort of visually go through the stage in my head. So I'll be kind of off wherever I'm at with my eyes closed. Buzzer goes off, and then I'm just kind of like bobbing and weaving my way through the stage with my eyes closed. So that's the pre make ready. Get up to the bay, step in again, do a couple of like deep breathing things just to control heart rate, because that's the first thing that'll throw your stage off, is just having too much adrenaline you're going through you, or the heart rate beating too much. So just to chill out a little bit, relax, and then I will do kind of that same thing. I will do one more eyes closed sort of visual walkthrough, bobbing and weaving, as you'll often see people do. I do like a Insta360 camera, turn on that camera. I will then load and make ready, get in the start position, come up, one sight picture, check the dot. Check the dot always against the brightest target on the bay, depending upon your sun presentation. So like if you got a white popper especially, that's a pretty common mistake, is you don't set your dot intensity bright enough. And if you get a popper that's like got blazing sun on it, it may show up on cardboard, but it's going to vanish 100% when you get to that white popper. So make sure your dot's where it needs to be. And that's pretty much it. I'll do like two or three reps of coming off the belt to just press out the gun, especially if there's like a closed target that I'm going to be shooting directly off the marks. And that's kind of it. It's a lot of just like visual and mental drilling of the stage into my head so that it becomes part of that subconscious, and I'm not actively having to think about my positions and what I'm shooting and what I should be seeing when I get from spot to spot to spot.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, those are all the topics I wanted to cover. Was there anything that you wanted to touch on, or we didn't touch on enough?
No, I think it's pretty good honestly, you man, a lot of these podcasts are just like conversational and just which this one definitely was as well. But you had a couple of good pointed questions that steered the conversation. So no, I'm really pleased with what we've done here.
I'm all about interrogation.
Yeah, we talked about paintball way more than I thought I would, for sure, 100%.
Well, but I think there's a lot to take away from that. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like it still pertains to what this.
Yeah, there's not a lot of sports that are like a parallel to what we do, and that's probably the closest one. And it's just a weird environment where like the dollar spend of the industry in the shooting sports is way higher than paintball, but like the manufacturer participation is way higher over there, even though they're fighting for less dollars over there. So
yeah, I mean,
we can figure it out and elevate our matches.
Yeah, and even airsoft, it's being huge. People are now starting to play that in malls. They can do it indoors and have sensors and all kinds of stuff. So I think there are other things outside of actual firearms that are very related that we can learn from. So I think it's very pertinent.
Absolutely, getting out of our little shooting bubble and just seeing other sports, competitive cornhole, paintball, golf, you name it. Like, there are ideas we can take from all of these things to make our match experiences better. The match itself, the actual pulling of the trigger and stage design, I think that's fairly dialed in across the board. I haven't shot a lot of matches where I walk away and I'm just like, man, what were they thinking? This was the most boring match, or the match difficulty was way too high for the typical competitor. Like, I just don't see a ton of that. We just need to put on a better show and make it more appealing to the masses, that when they walk, when they pay their $150 state match fee, like, they feel like it wasn't just a local match where they slap some banners on the wall,
And a few more stages.
A few more stages.
Yeah.
So we got to figure that part out, and that's where we're gonna. Growth is not the problem. We get new shooters all the time. We got to figure out a way to retain them and make them more interested for the long term.
Agree. Well, if you're up for it, we should run this back after PCC Nationals.
Yeah, we can have a debrief after Nationals and see how I did on reaching my goal. And
absolutely.
How the trade show was. And talk about how the trade show was.
There you go. I like it. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Jason. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. And just obviously, I've got a couple guys to talk about here. If you're into the PCC world, I definitely recommend if you're in the market for PCC to check out DaVinci Machining. Their DG9 PCC is one I've been shooting here for about a year and a half. They are big supporters of USPSA shooting, especially. They sponsor tons of matches and do lots of donations. And so, like if you RO a match or even want a match, they donate receiver sets and things like that. So I'm big on supporting those that support what we do. And all of the manufacturers that I work with, for the most part, are heavily involved. Jason at Brass Monkey's doing it on a regional level. He's always trying to figure out a way to get bigger into it. But he's sponsoring lots of state matches in the area. Company Break Arms, I rep their charging handle. I've run that thing for about 2.5 years. They are, obviously on the AR platform, they are more centric around the defensive sports, but or not sports, but like just defensive shooting in general. But they're looking to get more involved, and they're trying to build a shooting team that's not just carbine focused. So big support for those guys. I'm a big fan, and they're made here in the USA. Not a lot of charging handles are made that way. You get a lot of you might get assembly in the USA from foreign components and all that jazz, but they're making all their stuff up there in Minnesota. So DaVinci Machining, Brass Monkey Bullets, I did it the wrong way again, and Break Arms are huge supporters of mine. And,
well, Jason, what I'll do then is, for you and your sponsors, I'll put a link in the show notes to your link tree.
Awesome.
So
I appreciate that.
They can find everything at one time, one spot.
Yeah, man. And if anybody has questions about carbines, PCCs, bullets, reloading, anything like that, definitely reach out to me on Instagram and stuff like that. I'm happy to chat and help people progress in the sport and share the knowledge that I have. You might not be able to come shoot a match with me and steal that information directly, but I'm happy to chat it out with anybody on the DMs there if you got questions or anything like that.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks for coming on, and we will do this again in the fall.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dave.
Until next time.
Don't be a little bitch.
Yeah.